Good afternoon. My name is Afsaneh, Beschloss, founder of RockCreek. I want to welcome you all today to this great discussion. We have our senior advisors and advisory board members around the table, and we're going to be talking about the US economy, the global economy, and how the markets are behaving, as well as workplace and inclusion and ESG and impact investing. So with that introduction, let's jump in. One of the areas, not to change subjects too dramatically, but is related to China and emerging markets that is moving very, very fast, is the area of impact and sustainable impact. I like the word that DeAnne uses because all of us around the table have got impactful, sustainable economic development and investing in our DNA and in our bloodstreams. And DeAnne and I worked years ago on how do we get less carbon emissions through cleaner energy. And we didn't used to call it sustainable impact, we just did it. It didn't have all those big names. It has become a big area now in the industry, particularly in the investment industry. When we sort of look at those, we recently had the head of UNPRI, the chair of it, Martin Skankel, was here speaking. Last week, RockCreek was an inaugural signatory of the IFC principles, which are really, really interesting, of principles of responsible investing. So the industry is starting to take these kinds of things more seriously. And it sort of goes back to all the things we're talking about, innovation. And data allows you to look at these things in a more thoughtful way, whether it is carbon emissions, whether it is the governance of a company, whether it is the future of work, something that you're working on a lot. So do you see that as being sort of a growth area? How do you look at it? And in all the different things that you're doing every day, what do you think of it?
So it's actually been it's grown faster than expected. Large financial institutions like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs have a lot of their investors looking for investment opportunities that way, BlackRock. So there's the development of whole new indices and sort of packages of funds that have ESG themes, and they can either have broad ESG themes or they can have a particular theme on education or health or water or you name it.
Exactly. And we're doing that every day.
And that is continuing to grow fast, and it's continuing therefore to grow as a share of global financial markets. So it's growing faster than a lot of other parts of the market. And then impact, which is the distinction that the IFC makes, is impact is really private. It has to do with the intention of investors. A lot of impact investors are willing to accept lower than market returns for impact. Some investors want market returns and impact. A lot of that money most of that money is in private. So it's in private equity or venture capital or just whole new kind of organizations where they're getting financing but not through the publicly traded marketplace. And that's very small. I mean, it's got a lot of attention right now, but it's still very, very small. But the issuance of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN has become a motivator here. A lot of investors are now saying, okay, I'm either looking at a sustainability investment in publicly traded market, or I'm looking at an impact investment in the private market to help achieve one or more of these Sustainable Development Goals. And by the way, a lot of companies now have started to put up on their websites and in their marketing and basically what they are doing in the pursuit of the SDGs or one or two SDGs. So I think there's a lot of momentum there.
I think there's also a thread of this discussion which relates, at least in the UK, to how do we save capitalism. There are certainly a number of people who think the future of capitalism, that young people are no longer certain that capitalism is better than socialism, whatever socialism means in different countries. Anyway, so this dimension leads to the need for companies to define and clarify what is their purpose. And we used to call this vision, and this is not really new. But on the other hand, I think it is actually helpful for a number of companies who may or may not be talking about the development goals and so forth, but just to think through and articulate what is it beyond making a profit for the shareholder that this company is all about. Yes. And it can be just a strapline. I remember at Roche it was doing today what patients need tomorrow. Okay. Now maybe that's easy for a drug development company that's working on cancer. Right. You know, if you're a fashion company, better think twice about what your purpose is.
But it can also be about
it may be employment,
and it can be about sourcing and so on. Yeah. And if you think of the companies that dominate the stock market, the really big companies, there's a lot of maybe this is a cautionary tale. Right. There is a lot of cynicism now about do no evil, which was Google's thing, and they changed a little bit to avoid, to be doing good rather than doing no evil and so on. But I think that genuinely a lot of these young founders were interested. They were interested in cool stuff and in engineering and so on, but they were also interested in society and how to.
I think that's right. It's a very. I think you can be very. I think it's a very positive development.
What we found before and now is that you can have
do that
projects
and make money.
that are cleaner and make money. Yeah. Health sector in emerging markets, fastest growing area. Education, fastest growing area. EdTech.
I think so. I think what you do is you want to say there are lots of examples where you can. And then there are some examples where actually it is the public sector's responsibility. It is not a market. And one of the things in assessing an impact investment is to figure out, is this an area where actually the private sector or the private money is substituting for something that really should be done by the public sector, in which case it's not terribly likely it's going to generate those returns. But this is all about measuring impact.
Yeah. No. And I think on DeAnne's point, younger generations have not had the need to know how fantastic markets are. And so they can look at something that seems as if it's more easily directed into good works and think, I want to go that way. But I do think that educating and reminding. And of course, the Chinese learned that lesson, just as we were talking about before. I mean, the way the Chinese were able to make the huge, breathtaking strides were because they adapted markets. Right. And as I say, we were mistakenly believing that if you have a market economy, the other stuff follows. Well, it's not connected, and that we're learning too. But it goes back a little bit to our discussion this morning, where there's a demonizing of corporates because of benefits they get, let's say, out of tax reform. And you forget that a corporation it may be a legal person, but the people who work in a corporation are human beings. And this notion that markets and corporations should be demonized in favor of whatever.
But you know what Mr. So one of the people that's added fuel to this fire, which I like the fire, so it's not a negative thing here, okay, is Larry Fink. I mean, basically his message is, but his message honestly is, if you pursue profits with purpose, you are sustainable in the long run. If you pursue profits at the expense, or you have no purpose, your license to operate, the willingness of society to say, yeah, you can operate, is basically going to be called into question. Okay, so corporations got from society, yes, you can operate because we think you're in the benefit of society. You've got to actually be explicit about.
But then you have to also follow through with your proxy and voting and practice what you preach.
I am not, this is
practice what you preach in your letter.
This is not meant to be a pro or con for Larry Fink. It is meant to say that he captured in his words a sentiment among many investors. Also those investors who are thinking about what's the future of capitalism, okay?